This is now our last part on multimedia, and in this week we once again take a look on images. At least at the very beginning there are two topics that we still haven't yet discussed. One of which are image maps, which are images that are divided up into different areas, and each area ultimately is a link going to a different location. For example, once I click on that person, I end up on his Wikipedia page. Once I click on this person, I end up on that person's Wikipedia page. Another topic that we haven't yet discussed is the so-called favicon. The favicon is that image that's being displayed inside the tab right here. And we will also take a look how to create one of those. And then we are done with images and we are moving on to other multimedia, such as, for example, video, audio, and also including other content from other websites, for example, Google Maps or YouTube videos, and a couple of other examples we will take a look at. In terms of vocabulary, where we are today is mainly in HTML. These are the elements that we will take a look at in terms of other multimedia, such as video, audio, etc. And in terms of images, once again, we are here with our image element. There are two more attributes that we haven't yet discussed, and these are related, both of them are related to maps. And we will ultimately associate our image with a map, and then we create those areas on top of the map. And this is what we will be starting with. And in terms of CSS, there is no new vocabulary that we will be going over. However, we will have a little bit of a review once again on object fit, position, and also the filter property. So maybe we have wondered already why this is actually called object fit or position. And it's the case because not only content images can make use of those two properties, but also videos. Same happens for the filter, and here it's even the case that also other content that we are embedding later, that we are including onto our website, they can also make use of filter, besides videos and content images. So that is in terms of vocabulary. Let's get started with our image map. I have created one here, or I have created an image here already. And in terms of code, this is the image, and that is a box in which I have placed that image inside. So a div element, it's a container box. Container boxes are by default always display block. And I haven't changed that one, and I also haven't given that container box any dimensions. Meaning, what are the rules for block level container boxes? If they don't have any dimensions, they will be as high as the content, meaning as high as this image in this case. And they are as wide as the parent, or to be absolutely precise, as wide as the content area of the parent. And this image that I have placed in here is actually greater than the actual box, which ends right here, because its parent is the blue box of that box here. It ends right here, and that image inside is actually greater. It would overflow, and it does overflow. However, I have set that overflow from being visible to hidden. So right here on the box in which that image is inside, so have I set text align to center, meaning that image is ultimately centered, and it will therefore equally overflow on the right as well as on the left side. Let's get started with the actual code. So we are now making use of the map element, and that map element we can give a name, and then we can associate our image with that map. So I will just call it Alps now, and now let's go into that first attribute, or into another attribute for the image element that we haven't yet seen, and that is the use map attribute. So here we're defining, as the word already implies, we now want to make use of a map. So we are basically associating that image now with that map by just specifying exactly the same value here as we have given that map a name, the name value that we have given to the map. The only difference here is we need to precede it by a hash or pound symbol. And then we are done. It's all set. Now the image is associated with that map. We have now an image map. And now we can create areas on top of that map by using the area element. And that one, those areas ultimately will be a link getting us to a different location. And therefore, once again, same as with the regular anchor, with the regular link, the A element, we are defining the path where that link shall go to by using the hyperlink reference attribute. In here comes the path. And now what we can determine is what type of shape do we want that area to be. And of course also, where do we want that shape then ultimately to be located on top of that image map. So these are the other two attributes that we need to specify. It's compulsory in order for the things to work here. So first of all, the shape, and secondly, it's the coordinates. So where do we want that shape to be on top of the image map? And the shape by default has the value default, meaning it refers to the entire area ultimately here. So the entire area, the entire image is now one area, one single area. And here we have other options. For example, we can use circle, rectangle, and polygon. Polygon is basically any other shape that we cannot create by circle and rectangle. And we will be starting with a rectangle. And then we are now defining the coordinates for that rectangle. Where shall that rectangle ultimately be on that image map? So first of all, how far shall it be from the left? Then how far shall it be from the top? So for example, I will now go for 50 pixel from the left and 50 pixel from top. So ultimately, approximately, it will be right here. And then still we need to define the width for that rectangle and also the height in order for that rectangle to be actually visible, to be there in the first place. And I will give it a width of 100 as well as a height of 100 pixels. And now as soon as I have reloaded the page, here is that rectangle. It has 100 pixel wide and 100 pixel height right here. So we are always starting with horizontal, left, and then comes top, vertical, and then comes width, which is also horizontal, and then comes vertical, which is height. And these values here, they are in pixel. So we are not attaching the px unit because the only value that we can provide here are pixel values. Therefore, we don't need to attach the px value. In fact, it is even an error. And we cannot provide, therefore, not percentage values, which is quite a disadvantage, as we will find out in a couple of minutes. But before, let us go for our next shape that we can use, and that is a circle. And a circle, also here we are ultimately defining how far shall that circle be away from the left, how far shall it be away from the top, and also now the width and the height. However, for a circle, the width and the height is exactly the same. And therefore, we are only using one single value here. And that one is actually not the width or height, meaning the diameter of that circle. Instead, it's actually the radius, meaning half the width or half the height. And that one I will just leave at 100 pixel. However, those values we have now specified here, 400 pixel from the left and 100 pixel from the top, are actually referring to the center of the circle. Meaning, referring now to left, it will be 300 pixel from the left now. And 0 pixel from top. Because now it's 100 pixel radius, therefore the circle will be starting 300 pixel from left, and it will also be exactly at the edge of that image ultimately. And here we have our circle. So that's the circle, and now comes that last shape that we can use, and that is a polygon, by which we can create any other shape, any shape that we want to. And this is what we ultimately, usually, or in most situations, what we want. For example, I will now be creating the shape of exactly that lake here. What we need here is at least 6 values, and they always come in pairs. So there is a pair always defining left and top. For example, let me go for 50 and 100. That is how far from the left, how far from the top. And now, once again, next values are how far from the left and how far from the top. And then once again, how far from the left, how far from the top. And that over and over and over again. And of course, we would not specify or find the values for that lake, find those values out ourselves. Because that is quite an effort to do in order to measure all these points that we ultimately want. Instead, what we will be using is a website such as this one. And once again, as usual, there are alternative websites out there. And here we can create those coordinates, or let this software, let this website create the coordinates for us. All we need to do, we need to point on our map, and ultimately here the first two values, the first pair of values has now been given to us. That value is how far from the left, how far from the top. Now comes the second one. How far from the left, how far from the top. Next one, again, always comes in pairs, always how far from left, how far from top. And here we can ultimately create any shape that we want to, and all we need to do then afterwards is take those coordinates, copy and paste them over, and we will have our lake being a link now, being an area on top of that image map. So let me reload the page, or let me actually, before I do so, let me outcomment those ones. So we really have that full shape here. And here we can see now that lake is exactly the clickable area that we have copied and pasted over from that other website. Now this area that we have just created, once we click it, of course, we end up on the specified location specified by the hyperlink reference attribute. This area, however, is kind of a part of an image, and therefore it also can use one attribute that the image element also uses, and that is the alternative attribute. This is used for screen readers and search engine robots to ultimately identify what that content, what that image part, that area is about. So it's a textual description of that image, because those parties, the screen readers and sight disabled people, they cannot make sense of images. So all I will be specifying now is whatever is there. Let me just call it Lake XY. So it's nothing that ultimately becomes visible on our website. It's just for those two other softwares that are reading our code. Now comes another value that we have used last week. We have introduced it last week. This not value but attribute is actually not a specific one to area. It's a global attribute, meaning that attribute any other element can have, any element that exists out there, and that is the title attribute. Title, here once again we can specify what is right there on that given point, on that area, what that image is about. However, in this case, in comparison to the alternative attribute, here that one becomes visible ultimately inside a so-called tooltip. And it makes sense to be used, and it was a brief repetition of that attribute that we have introduced last week. Now comes another attribute, and that is an attribute that the link element, the anchor element, has. In actual fact, this area now, this one is a link ultimately, and therefore it can have all the attributes that the anchor element has, that the link has. And we can make use of all of them right here as well. However, most of them we haven't yet discussed, because the anchor element we will be going over once we take a look at all the server elements. Because the anchor element, most of the time we are going to the server, retrieving something from the server, and therefore the anchor is under server elements. However, one attribute that the anchor element has, and therefore also the area element, one I want to introduce now already, because that one becomes relevant to us later in this week as well. And that is the target attribute. And here we are ultimately defining where shall that content open. Once we are clicking that area, shall it open in the same tab, or shall it, for example, open in a different tab? So this we are defining by using self. That is one option, and this is exactly what is happening by default right now. It's opened in exactly the same tab. Now the other one is blank. And that one means open that content once it gets clicked here, open the content in a separate tab. And there are three more values that we can use here for that target attribute. All those ones we will encounter later in this week when we take a look at how to embed, how to include other content from other websites. Now this area, or this image map in general, this one has quite a disadvantage, and that is because we can only specify those values in pixel, and therefore it's completely inflexible. Meaning ultimately, if we are having an image that is actually, its dimensions are in percentage, meaning it will decrease and increase when the browser window gets smaller, but that will ultimately then completely destroy the areas that we have created. Also, when we decide to change the image size, so let me just do this and let me change that image now to a width of 100%, meaning it will be as wide as its parent. And the parent is this box that ends right here. And this is now where that image will also end. It will not overflow. And this is now the area here is not clickable anymore. The link actually starts in the middle of the lake and goes further down into the mountains. So we have just destroyed that map basically. So it's quite inflexible, these HTML maps, and we need JavaScript if we really want to have a flexible map ultimately defined by percentages. Now one more comment I want to make on the image. There is another attribute, however that one we cannot yet make use of, at least nothing that we have learned in this course, because once we have specified that value, then whenever an area on that image gets clicked, then those coordinates are sent to the server. And then on the server, with a language such as PHP, we can then ultimately do whatever we want to with that area or with that image. We can make something happen ultimately. So that one I just wanted to briefly mention, as it makes sense. This is just another attribute that the image element can have as well, also related to maps. So this is it about our major topic of today in regards to images, and now comes a rather minor topic, and that is the so-called Favicon that is on top here inside that tab. And this one is nothing that is part of our content, and therefore it is part of our head element right on top here. Our body is the content, our head inside here are all the things that are for and about our content. And whenever we are including something, so now we are defining ultimately what image shall be used here. So we need ultimately to include an image. And whenever we include something for or about our website, then we are using the link element. And the link element has two attributes that are required. The same ones that we have used here already to include a CSS file. So first of all is the relationship. In what relationship is that including file now to our content? And the second one is of course the hyperlink reference. Here we are defining the path onto the server where that image is located. And let me just use exactly the logo, that dummy logo that we are using on our example website here. And the relationship in this case for including a favicon, an image to be used as favicon, is icon. Now there are quite a number of other relationships that actually exist out there. Those ones we will touch on in a coming week. So once I reload the page now, here we have it. That is now our logo being displayed as favicon inside the tab. And that was the last topic of images. Now we are going into other multimedia, and that includes video and audio. That is the one that's the topic that we will be starting with. And herefore I have created something already, and that is just a container box, nothing else. And that container box, all I have done is I have set text align to center, meaning whatever inline element will ultimately be in here will be centered in the middle. Because text align can only be given to inline level elements, not to block level elements. And here we will now be creating the video using the video element. And the video element has quite some similarities to with the image element, and also quite some differences. So let's take a look what that video element, how we make use of it. So first of all, the video element it's closing. It has a closing tag. The image element does not have a closing tag. Now, however, both of them, video and image, are sharing the attribute source. And with that source attribute, we are defining, of course, once again, the path to the server where that video is located. And I already have videos right in here, I have created inside the media folder another folder called videos, and in here I have a file called sample.mp4. That's the file format. So that exact same video I also have in a different format, which we will be making use of in a moment. And so that is now what I will be using as path. It's media inside the videos folder, and now I can include sample.mp4. So let's take a look how this is being displayed on the website, and here we can see another similarity between image and video, because I haven't given that one any dimensions yet. Therefore it will be as wide and as high as its original size. It will just have its original size. Same as images. When we don't give an image its dimensions, it will be its original size. So therefore we can now also make use here with the video, same as with images, of the width and the height attribute. So either or, because it's always the browser that can figure it out. Then ultimately when we define the width, it knows the height as well by the ratio. Also, when we define the height, it knows the width immediately as well by the ratio of that video, same as with images. Now let me define now that width to, and let me set it to 400. So it's once again, it's a value without any pixel, because the only value that we can insert here is pixel, nothing else. So no px unit is needed. It's even an error to include those px afterwards. Now once again, the width and the height, those attributes actually only exist for the browser in order to speed him up in laying out the website ultimately. So it's nothing that becomes visible on the website itself. It's a process that happens before the website is displayed inside the browser window. So that is always the case when we are dealing with elements, or when we are including content onto our website that is pixel rich, that is made up of many pixels, such as images, videos, and also later when we are including other content from other websites. Then we always have the option of width and height, because the browser ultimately then takes the original size if we don't specify anything. And then once it receives the actual dimensions from the CSS file, then it needs to reorganize all the pixels that are there. And this is the reason why whenever we can, we should specify the width right here or the height. One of those, at least for the video, is either or. Same for the image, either or, because the other one it will always infer from the ratio. Now that is the width I have given now to that video. Let's take a look how this looks like. And that video somehow looks a little bit like an image, doesn't it? Because there are no control buttons yet. There is no play button, no speaker button, no timeline, no duration of that video, nothing at all. So we can create those control buttons ourselves with HTML and CSS, and then do the functionality for those buttons with JavaScript. Another option that we have is we can specify the attribute controls. And that means that is telling the browser, hey, we want you, browser, to use your control buttons. And these are the control buttons then included by the browser. However, the disadvantage here is that each browser is using its own control buttons ultimately. And they look all different, and they all have different options. So for example, here the duration is not being displayed. And the style, of course, the appearance of those control buttons is different. So each browser has its own control buttons ultimately. So if we really want consistency across browsers in how our control buttons look like, we need to create them ourselves. So this is the controls attribute. And that is now actually the second attribute that we have seen that does not have a value besides isMap is actually also one. And these attributes are so-called Boolean attributes because they do not have a value, or they do not need to have a value. In actual fact, we could specify that value by using exactly the same name as the attribute, but it doesn't make any sense. This one is absolutely sufficient because either we want the control buttons from the browser or we don't want them, meaning we either specify that attribute or we don't. And therefore, we don't need any value because of only those two options being available. It's either yes or no. And therefore this is a Boolean attribute, one that does not have any value. Now let's go for the other attributes, and now come 3 more Boolean attributes. So first of all, it's autoplay, whether we want that video to start straight away once the website is being loaded. And next one is muted, also a Boolean attribute, so whether we want that video to be muted. And now comes loop, which stands for repetition or repeat. Repeat that video all over again. Whenever it finishes, start from the beginning again. So when would we use something like those attributes? And for example, when wouldn't we use any control buttons? Let me give you an example from this website here. So this website, let me reload it. And on this website, that video starts automatically, autoplay. It's muted by default. It starts all over again once it is finished. And also there are no control buttons at all. So this is one example here, when we would make use of some of those attributes, of those features in this case. Now comes an attribute that has a value now, and that is preload. And preload, here we are ultimately defining, shall that video load straight away when the website is being visited. So when the website is loading, load that video immediately too. And the value that is here by default is auto, and that is exactly the case. So load that video immediately when the page is loading. And this is what is happening right here as well on this example website, because that video, it will be shown immediately. It will be watched ultimately. However, if we are not sure that our video will be watched by that person that is visiting our website, then we shouldn't make use of auto, because that would just mean unnecessary data to be retrieved from our server. That is, would be unnecessary if that person is not even watching our video ultimately. So therefore, another option that we have is none. And that means only load that video when the play button gets pressed. However, let me remove the autoplay value here. However, that one has a disadvantage, and that is that the preload none, muted loop, preload none, the control buttons are not there. Sorry, the control buttons, and therefore here we can see there is no image being displayed now. So what the browser actually does by default, it takes the first image of the video as display image in the first place before the button gets pressed, so before the video plays, so the thumbnail or the poster. And this image is a so-called frame. So a video, as we know, only consists of many images of so-called frames, shown to us very quickly, usually 20 to 30 frames in 1 second. And it will take the first image to be used, to be shown here, if it can. However, now we have specified, hey, don't download that movie straight away, meaning only when that play button gets pressed. And therefore it cannot grab that first frame, that first image here. So another option that we have is using metadata. Metadata tells the browser, hey, load that video only when the play button gets pressed. However, when the page is loading already, give me all the information about the video, that includes, for example, duration, the file size. Here we can see the duration is now set to 000. So once I reload now, here it's now, that one is there because we have just set it to metadata. So all the information about the video will be retrieved as soon as the page is loading, while the video is being retrieved when the play button is pressed. And that includes also the first frame is being sent already to be used now as poster. So all the information about the video, and this is exactly what meta means. Data is clear, and meta about the video, the data about that video. For example, we know the meta element already, or the meta. And meta always means about in regards to the situation that we are talking about. So in this case, it's about the content here. So it's inside the head, this meta element. And the head, everything in here is for and about our content. And here, about is referring to the content in this case. Now here, all whenever we are including something, we are using the link element. When we are including something for or about for our website. And the title is the title for our website, for our content. And it received its own element because it's such an important element. It's even required for that element to be specified in order for our code to be considered as valid by the browsers. However, basically everything else is inside a meta element. All it means is about, and there are quite a number of options, and what options these are then specified by the attributes. But basically everything else that's not the title and link, almost everything is inside the meta element. It's about. All it means is about, nothing else. About the current situation that we are talking about. So about here means about the video ultimately. So that is metadata. And now comes the last one, and that is poster. Meaning we could set the preload value to none. So there won't be any image being retrieved from the server to be used. We can then use our own image by using poster. And even if we are using metadata already, we can still use our own poster, our own thumbnail ultimately. And all we need to specify here is the path, of course, to the server, to that image that we want to use as poster, as thumbnail. And let me now make use of that image right here, the Alps image that I have used in order to create the image map. So once I reload the page, we can see that this image is not taking up the entire area of that video. And now we are coming back to ratio. Now the ratio of a video is 16:9, meaning it's 16 times wide as it is 9 times high. So let's go once again back into those units that we have seen, 16:9 resolutions, ratios. And here we can see 16:9 is the same as 32:18, is the same as 128:72. So we can make up any numbers here as long as they are 16 times wide, when they are 9 times high. So these are 16:9 resolutions. And the screen industry, the entire industry that builds screen for laptops, for mobile phones, almost every screen out there, if we are excluding a couple of mobile phones and also the iPad. Otherwise, all the screens basically are created nowadays since a decade in a 16:9 resolution, meaning they are 6 times as wide as they are 9 times high. And therefore, because those screens are made in 16:9 resolution, in a 16:9 ratio, therefore videos are also in 16:9. Because ultimately we are opening those videos, or we are watching those videos in full screen. And in order for them to take up the entire screen, they must be 16:9. And because the video is 16:9, therefore the poster, the thumbnail that we are using, must also be 16:9 in order to take up the entire area. So there is no possibility for us to make that poster cover the area as we can with a content image, for example. It doesn't work. So we need to make use of an image that has a 16:9 ratio. And one of those images we have already used, and that is the background on our website, the Disney background. And let me reuse that one in order that we can see exactly that one is now fitting the entire area here. It's a 16:9 image and the video is 16:9 as well, so it will fit the entire area. And let us take a look, stick to the ratio right now and take a look what actually happens if I would now specify the height. Now in regards to an image, I would now completely destroy the image's ratio, but this one doesn't happen with a video. So now it's a 4:3 ratio in this case, width 400, height 300. And what will happen now is, instead of now covering the entire area, we will get blank spaces here, or black bars. So let me take a look at Firefox, at Internet Explorer. Here we can see it more clearly. So we are used to those black bars in some movies that have been created back in the days where 16:9 resolution hasn't yet been a standard. So then we always have those black bars. And this is what we of course never want. So our video, if we are creating a video on our website, it must have a 16:9 ratio ultimately in terms of width and height, in order that there are no black bars being visible, so that that video takes up really the entire area. So that is video. Let's do a little bit of repetition in regards to that video, and let's create a video that will ultimately take up the entire our one viewport. So we will take a look at the viewport once again now. First of all, let me remove that video and let us make use of that intro container once again that we already have made use of earlier in this week for an introduction container for our Disney background image. So let me just reload it so we can see it once again. So that one is now a container box that we have given a height 2 weeks ago to 100 VH, viewport height. And the viewport once again is that entire area that is there, that is visible at the given point in time without scrolling the page. It includes the scroll bar though, but without scrolling the page, so it stops right here. In comparison, the body would go all the way down, all the way until the end of the content. The viewport is only that given rectangle at the given point that's visible to us without scrolling the page. Now that box we have given, that container box, we have given now 100% of the viewport height. So therefore that box will be that high until here. And we haven't given it any width, but a container box that is display block, a block level container box, will be as wide as its parent, or as the content area of its parent, to be precise. So it will go until here, not including the scroll bar though. The body does not include the scroll bar, which is the parent in this case of the intro container. The viewport always includes the scroll bars, but the body does not. And now this area is taken up, the entire area, by that box. Now let's make that video now inside here, using the exact same source. And by default, when we don't specify dimensions to a video, it will have its original size. Meaning once again here it will overflow, it's completely greater than the actual box in which it is inside that intro container. It's overflowing that intro container. So therefore let me now give that video a height of 100%. And let's take a look what happens. So now the video is only going until here and it stops. It doesn't go any further. And therefore also here, not here. Same thing. It has now 100% of the height. Now let's make use of object fit once again. So if we want to make that video cover the entire area, we are using the value cover. But let's first of all take a look what value is actually being used here by default. First of all, we cannot yet make use of object fit, because what we always need to do first in order to make use of it, we need to stretch the image or the video in this case first of all, and then we can make use of object fit. So first of all, we need to stretch the entire area, width of the video, make it width 100%, height 100%. However, it will not take up the entire area. So for a video, for an image, what would have happened now by default? It would have covered the entire area without overflowing and the ratio would have been broken. Now with a video, however, the value that is being used for object fit is not fill by default. Instead, it is contain. And therefore, it will never lose its ratio, and it will therefore also not cover the entire area, because contain is that value that means go as wide or as high as possible, and when you reach the end, then stop. Stop for height and width as well. So it's stopping right here, and it goes as wide here, but that's it. This area is not being occupied now anymore. So that's the default value used by videos, and the position that is used by default is object position center. Object position, and the value is used center. So this is exactly what is happening right now. In comparison to images, center is also the case for object position, but by default the value used once we go for width and height 100%. So if we then would not specify anything for images, then this image would have the value fill. And it will take up the entire area. It will not overflow. But in order to cover the entire area, it has to break the ratio ultimately of the video or of the image. And here we can see that kid is now, it shrunk a little bit. So the ratio of that image is broken, of that video in this case as well, which just consists of images. So this is the difference between images and video. And filter we can also make use of. Filter, same thing here. Let me go for our grayscale example once again. So let me make that video grayscale so it will be gray. So it's not the case that we are actually making all these images gray that are part of that video. Instead, there is actually just a front layer put on top of the video, meaning all the images will ultimately be gray. It's not that they actually are gray. There's just a front layer put on top, nothing else. And now comes that problem that we have. First of all, let me change it to object fit cover, because of course we don't want the ratio to be broken. Now it's covering the entire area. However, things are overflowing equally on top and on bottom now. So we can of course change that by using here top, bottom, or center, the three values that we can now make use of. So we can only position a video or an image when it is overflowing or when it has leeway to move around. Otherwise we can't. So now comes our problem though, because we know Microsoft Internet Explorer does not support that feature of object fit. So still we will have our black bars here. But at least by default what Microsoft does, it centers the element and it contains the video. So that is at least a default action that is quite good to have. But otherwise it doesn't support cover, so we cannot get rid of these black areas by using object fit. However, there is a possibility. Let me go to our website again that we have used already as example. And this one doesn't have any black bars on the side. And there is an opportunity. However, that one involves media queries, which we will be going over in the week when we take a look at how to make our website responsive, meaning good looking on mobile phones, on any screen size, which, for example, this website is. So let me decrease the size, and here we can see it's always adjusting the entire content. This is what we will ultimately achieve as well later on. This is a responsive website. And here we will discuss once again videos and take a look how to actually remedy this situation that there are those black areas still left. So we will be able to cover our video ultimately also in Internet Explorer. So that is video. Now we are going into audio, and audio, it's now a small topic because most of the things, now all of the things that we have used inside the video element, all these things are used inside the audio element as well. At least some of them are used, but they are always the same. For example, it doesn't have a poster, for example. Because audio is not a video, we don't need a thumbnail, of course. And also what it does not have is width and height, because this audio is not made up of pixels. Therefore, it's nothing that the browser, there is no benefit to the browser in reorganizing pixels. That's always the time-consuming part. And therefore we are always advised to specify the width and height. But audio is not pixel intense, therefore we are not using width and height, nor are we using the poster element. However, all the other attributes are ultimately the same, such as source, for example. Once again, I will be going into video, but this time I will be going into audio, which folder I have also created. And the file that I will be using is sample mp3. And here we can see I have another file, exactly the same content as mp3. However, it's a different file format, the one that we will be making use of in a moment. And now it's same thing here. Let me not go over it once again. First of all, we need controls in order for the audio to be there in the first place. Let me save it without controls, and let me also outcomment our introduction container, so I don't have to scroll down. And now let me reload the page. Nothing becomes visible. If we are specifying audio, without having any control buttons. So there is nothing right now. And let me therefore specify control buttons. And here that is the audio. But once again, different browsers have different styles, and this one is quite ugly, as I would say, the style that Microsoft is using for the audio buttons. So therefore we need JavaScript ultimately in order to have really nice buttons, which are nice here for Firefox, and also in Chrome they are quite nice. However, to also have consistency across the browsers, usually we would go for our own control buttons and create the functionality later with JavaScript. So this is audio, and many things audio and video have in common, as we just saw. So it's also muted, loop, preload, and autoplay also are the attributes that the audio element can have. What both of them also have in common is what comes inside here. And that, in order to get the reasoning behind that one, let me do a brief review now of what we have discussed last week, because it all has to do with compression ultimately. We have discovered 4 different file formats last week in regards to images. And 2 of them I want to go over briefly once again. And one is JPEG. JPEG are used for photos. Photos that we include on our website are in JPEG, because that format has this great advantage that we can kick out pixels. And that is great, because ultimately we need a photo to be in a smaller file size. We cannot make use of photos that we take with our digital camera or mobile phone, because the file size of those photos is far too large. Therefore, JPEG images have this great advantage. We can kick pixels out, and therefore reducing the file size, because each pixel is ultimately made up of 3 bytes. It consists of red, green and blue, and a mix of those 3 colors ultimately gives us the color at the given pixel. And each color has 256 options, which is 1 byte. And therefore, because there is red, green and blue, we ultimately are dealing with 3 bytes at a given pixel. And therefore, this is ultimately how an image is made up of all these pixels consisting of 3 bytes. And when we are kicking out pixels, we are always losing. For each pixel, we are losing 3 bytes ultimately. So JPEG has this great advantage. We can reduce, we can compress that image by kicking out pixels. So it's a lossy format. We are losing pixels, and those pixels are lost. They will never come back again. It's a lossy format. Now comes lossless compression, which we have discussed last week. And that is the case for PNG images, for example, because here we don't need to kick out any pixel. That is not the compression that PNG images need, because photos, they are made up of so many different pixels. Pretty much every few pixels is a different color in comparison to icons. So much of an area, or quite a large number of pixels, are always the same color inside icons. So they need a different compression here. And the compression that they use is lossless. Because, for example, here the compression is, instead of communicating 3 bytes for white and again and again and again and again and again and again, it's much easier to say 32 times those 3 bytes of white. Instead of saying white, 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 white. 32 times white. Much easier to say. That is lossless compression, because ultimately that instruction, 32 times white, for example, because that's the width of that image, 32 times white will ultimately recreate that image in its pixels. There is never a pixel being lost, never will there be a pixel be gone. So it's lossless. We are not losing any pixels, it's a lossless compression. Now let's go into audio and video. Now the topic of compression for those 2 things here, audio and video, is quite a complicated one. And I do not have the expertise to go into detail here, but let us scratch the surface of it. So it's lossless and lossy, nothing else. Audio consists of sounds, as we know, and sounds are vibrations. If we remember from week number 1, each vibration can be represented as a wave. But ultimately, whether we understand this with waves doesn't really matter, because audio, all we need to know is we can kick out some audio some waves that the human ear, that the human hearing would most likely not detect, that those sounds are gone. So kicking out some audio, some sounds inside that audio file. Ultimately, therefore, it's lossy. We are kicking things out and those things will never come back, but it will help us to reduce the file size of that audio file. Another one is lossless. So for example, if there is a drum, a consistent drum in the background, a consistent beat, some kind of beat in the background, or any sound that consists for a little bit longer, that one can be compressed in a lossless way. So it's easier to say, to communicate, hey, for example, 1 byte for that sound, 1 byte for that sound. Hey, let us just make 32 times for that sound consistently over a period of time. So similar to communicating 32 times wide, now, for example, 32 times that sound, for example. So lossless. Ultimately, it's being reproduced again, those sounds. We will never lose any sound here. So it's a mix of lossless and lossy, depending on which file format, but usually it's a mix of both. Same as is for video. Now with videos consist of images, many images that are shown to us very quickly, one after the other. And what are images? JPEG, could be JPEG images. So we can kick out pixels out of that image, and those pixels will never come back again. But it will reduce the file size ultimately. And of course those pixels, same as with JPEG images, those pixels are only kicked out at locations at least where the human eye would most likely not detect any quality worse quality ultimately. So that is lossy. We are losing pixels. Now comes lossless. Now I have been speaking for quite a while now. However, I have moved my mouse a little bit, but the background here, most of those pixels that I am recording here on that video, they did not change at all. So things can be reused over and over again, and the only thing that needs to change is that moving part, that mouse in this case, or the blinking cursor right here. For example, even with moving images, if we take a look at this mountain here, let me just play it again, and this mountain, even though it has now further moved to the right, it's still the same mountain. Now the sun is maybe a little bit, is shining a little bit differently, so it depends. But things can also be reused even if they are moving, ultimately, if they are moving to a different location from one image to the next. Because ultimately, how these compression things work, things are divided up into different areas, and each area is ultimately detecting whether that area can be reused from one image to the next. So there are quite a lot of tricks going on here. And that is by far not all that we have just scratched the surface on. So things are always lossy and lossless for most formats that exist out there. And some formats out there, they make use of that compression ideas. Another format makes use of those compression ideas. So it always depends on the format ultimately how small that the file size for a video or for an audio will ultimately be. And if a company tomorrow or today comes out with a better compression idea, what it can do, it can go to an organization behind the web, the organization called IANA, and that one is in charge of where all the different file formats are registered ultimately. So if we have a compression idea how to compress videos much better, if we have a new technology out now, we go to IANA and say, hey, please, we want to register now our new format. However, once we have registered our format, that doesn't mean that it can be used now in the industry out there, because it's still completely up to the industry whether they like our compression format and whether they want to use it. So completely depends, and the industry, who is part of the industry, for example, the browsers. Whether the browsers support a certain file format is completely up to them. And whether also not only browsers, but for example cameras. Many cameras compress videos at the same time that videos are taken. And depending on how they compress it, which format they are ultimately using, completely depends. So it's always depending on the industry whether to support a certain file format. And it depends on the file format how well it compresses the things. For example, let's take a look at our two different audio files here, which both have the same content, the same sound in there. And the MP3 format has a file size of 13.5 megabytes. In comparison to the OGG format, that one, even though it's exactly the same content inside this file, only has 4.5 megabytes. So it's 2/3 smaller than the MP3 file. So we should go for OGG, isn't it the case? Because the smaller the better, because ultimately that means that our video, or in this case our audio, will load much faster from the server. And now comes that problem because the industry is not supporting every format. MP3 is supported by all the browsers, while OGG is not supported by Safari and the Microsoft browsers. So that means we need to go for MP3 and cannot use OGG. But that is not the case, and now comes the element that we can place in here, and that is the source element, and that one has the source attribute. And instead of specifying the source inside the audio element by using the source attribute right here, we can use the source element here multiple times, and then the browser can choose ultimately from the format that it can decompress, that it is able to decompress. And here we can specify therefore even both sources, OGG and MP3. So all the browsers that can decompress the OGG file format, they will go ultimately for the OGG file to retrieve it from the server, which is good because then there is less loading time. And all the other ones will fall back to MP3. Those ones that cannot decompress OGG will use MP3 in this case. And if browsers can read OGG, they will skip the other one. Therefore, we should never specify the one, if we are making use of multiple formats, we should never specify the one that is supported by all the browsers. We should never specify it first, because then all the browsers will take this one and will skip OGG. And our intention of having smaller file sizes by using a different format than MP3 was in vain ultimately. So OGG is just one example. There are actually other file formats out there for audio that do a decent job too. So it's always the level of compression in comparison to the quality. So the quality of OGG is still decent though, but maybe a good ear can hear it, but it's still decent. It's always that level. We cannot go below a quality that is not acceptable anymore. It's always that trade-off between how much can a file be compressed, how many things can be kicked out, lossy for example, and the trade-off between then the quality. Is the quality still acceptable? Can it be used? So completely also depends on the situation, whether we are playing a sound, completely depends on the situation. But OGG is acceptable, the quality. And it's 2/3 smaller than the MP3 format. Now the browser will choose now which file it can decompress. However, it cannot identify that file only by the extension that's being displayed here. So there is actually some file formats have several extensions here that they use, and the browser doesn't know them all. So what the browser actually uses in order to identify the file format uniquely, exactly what that file format is by the type attribute and by the value actually that we use in here, the so-called MIME-Type. So whenever a company develops a new compression, a new way of compressing an audio or a video file, it can register his file format right here. And whenever it registers it, then it receives a unique identifier by which that file format can be identified. And that identifier is a so-called MIME-Type. A MIME-Type is divided up, or it consists of two parts. One is the main category of that file format. In this case, for us, it's audio. Can be image, can be video, can be text. And for us, it's audio. And that's the first part. Audio, and then divided up by /, and then comes the actual file extension that has been given to that file format uniquely. And in this case, it's the same as right here, but does not need to be the same as here. This one is always unique, but this one can have several abbreviations. However, we won't come across an example actually, but because here it's also MP3, but it can be, and we should always specify the type. This is the unique identifier by which the browser can figure out whether it can decompress that file format or not. Now let's go into video. Exactly the same thing here. Source element can be used multiple times here, because there are also formats that compress videos better than do other formats. Now the format that we are dealing here at videos on videos is MP4, and the other one is webM. While with audio we have actually a little bit also further options besides OGG and MP3. However, with video it's basically either it's webM or it's MP4. So that's it, for the reason to come in a moment. So videos, sample MP4, let me just change that one. Now the MIME type is, in this case, of course it's webM, or not of course, but it accidentally happens to be that it's exactly the same as the abbreviation. However, what changes now is the main category. So instead of being audio, this one is actually video. Now, of course, the main category here, and now we are set. Now webM is the one that is usually having a smaller file size, while still having an acceptable quality, completely acceptable, in comparison to MP4. Let us actually now take a look at can I use, so this is MP3, supported by all the browsers in regards to audio, apart from Opera Mini, but Opera Mini doesn't even support video and audio. So it doesn't matter for Opera Mini, we are not considering Opera Mini in this case. Now the other one that we are making use of right now is OGG, and here we can see Safari doesn't support it, and Microsoft does not support it either. Now let's go into video, and that one is MP4, supported by all the browsers. Now comes webM, not supported by Safari, not supported by Microsoft. Even though it's the smaller file size, at least almost always, if not the newest versions are used, which is not the case yet almost, as we will see in a moment. Now Edge browser has announced that it will support webM soon, so something to look out for in the time to come. But let us now discuss what webM and MP4 actually stand for. Because video compression, is that the file format that ultimately compresses the video? Because a video does not only consist of images, it also consists of audio. And it also consists of text in some situations, when in case there are any subtitles. So do these formats compress video, audio and text at the same time? And this is not the case. These formats are just abbreviations that we can refer to refer to all the compressions that are going on inside. These are just containers, nothing else. Just containers that have been given an abbreviation so we can refer to them. Because inside here there is a certain compression going on for video, which is usually still the most common one that's being used right now. Let me give you the MIME type, that is video H.264. However, in terms of audio, MP4 could maybe use OGG, could maybe use MP3, could use other audio compression formats. So this is really just a container, same as webM. These are containers consisting of multiple compression formats. This for video and then another one for audio, which can be one of several. For example MP3, for example OGG. And for text as well. Now with webM, it's actually for video, it is, let me give you the MIME type, it's V8, the most common one that's being out there right now. And for audio, it has two options actually, but nevertheless it's a container. It uses two different options for audio ultimately, either or. One of them uses one option, one compression format for video, one of the two compression formats for audio, and then for text it uses a separate compression format as well. So these are just containers, nothing else. And these formats here that are most common right now, they compress much less than do the newest versions, which is 265 and V9, and the actual MIME type is actually with P, even though it's referred to as V8 and 9. So it's video 9, and here it's H.265. So these ones are the latest ones. And those ones are battling it out because they are very good, both of them. They can compress a video file to twice as much as before, and they can still keep the same quality. So great inventions that have come out there, but however they are not yet widespread out there. Most cameras out there, if they are compressing at the same time as the video is being recorded, then they are still using the older versions. Same as for the software that I will give you now. So the software that we can use in order to convert our video and audio files. So here is the video and audio files can be converted online. That is one option. And if we want to go for a download option for an actual software to be used on our computer, so this is one website. There's also video for this exact same brand here. All the links are in the Excel sheet as usual under the notes. And all these free converters here, they still compress in the old way, which is still a good compression, but in comparison to the latest one, this is just twice as good. It's much better. Now, if we make use of this one here, this software, one thing I would recommend to pay attention to is once we install it, then the window comes up and then we click next, 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 etc. But before we click next, right on the first window, it asks us whether we want to do the manual or the automatic installation. I would go for the manual one because there are some checkboxes that we can check or not check for additional software to be installed on our computer as well. So ultimately we may or may not end up with an additional toolbar, for example, or an additional antivirus system on our computer. So I would go for the manual installation process right here. So these formats here, the latest ones, something to watch out for though, for the future. Whenever there is a free converter, right now but only some purchasable converters are offering these options yet. So they are relatively new. So something to keep in the back of our head that this is actually possible because they are really great. They compress twice as much while still keeping the same quality. So this is it now with video and audio, and now we are going into including other content onto our website. And herefore we are using the iframe element. So what I have prepared here a couple of things already. So I have a container box right here. Inside here is an iframe element, and that one I have not created myself. I have copied and pasted it over from the YouTube website. And let us do this before going into the actual element and the attributes that it can have. Let us go into including a YouTube video because it's nothing complicated. All we need to do is to go on that video that we want to have included onto our website, then go under share and then under embed, and then here is the actual iframe code. The iframe element with its attributes that we copy and paste over, and then that's it. Our YouTube video will then be embedded onto our website. Next one is Google Maps. Same thing, all I have created here is a container box, and that one I have copied and pasted over from the Google Maps website. All we need to do is search for our location that we want, and then ultimately we go under share and then embed map, and then we can copy and paste this iframe code over to our website, and that's it. Google Map has been embedded, so-called embedded, included onto our website. One more example I want to use is a weather application that's a weather forecast. For example, that one can be retrieved from this website. All we need to do is enter the city that we want the weather forecast to be, and that one we can then take the code, copy and paste it over. However, here we can see it's actually quite a large code that needs to be copied and pasted over, while the iframe element only makes up quite a small portion of this code. All the other code has to do with including here that link, the logo, etc. So this is just how they decided to do it, besides having only the iframe, which starts actually right here. And what I have done, I have only included the iframe element now. Of course, ultimately, if we make use of that one, we should at least have the logo. Some of that stuff we can most likely delete. I haven't actually taken a closer look here. But of course, the logo we need ultimately, and the link most likely as well, because this is what that website, of course, wants from us. Why it gives us this option in the first place for promotion purposes. And these are so-called widgets or applications. So one of those names we can choose from. This is how we always can find on the web. If we are looking for another widget or application, something else to include onto our website, this is most likely the name under which we will find good results. So this is now the weather application. Let me now reload our page to see the results. Here I have created this box here. I've given it already width and height. And in here is now the YouTube video. In here in this box is the Google Maps, and here is the weather forecast for Cape Town for the next 3 days. Now what we can also do, not only can we include content from another website, we can also include an entire website onto our website. For example, I'm now including our own website, the example website that we are using right now. All I'm embedding right now is week number 4. Exactly this week I have now used to be displayed inside this iframe element. However, we can also embed other websites. Not all websites allow us to do so, however. And we will take a look later on how to prevent other websites from embedding our website in an iframe. Because that is maybe something that we don't want other websites to do with our website. However, that one involves server configuration, and therefore I want to pack it, I want to go over it in a week when we go over the entire server related configuration stuff. So therefore let me skip it, and all I have now in here is the actual subpage now, week number 4. So let's go over a couple of attributes that the iframe has. And that is, once again, it's width and height, which just helps the browser to speed up the process until it can display the website. So it's a pixel intense inclusion here once again. So there are many different pixels ultimately, and therefore it helps the browser to speed up. Therefore, this iframe element also has these attributes, width and height. So of course, not always can we specify these in case we are using percentages, because these ones only accept pixels, but whenever we can, we should specify it. Now width and height, however, completely depends on the situation. In this case, in regards to the iframe. It completely depends what we are including onto our website, how to use width and height. Now in this case, here we can see I have embedded week number 4, but that one is not completely visible. So what happens here, everything can be accessed here by using a scroll bar, but not everything is visible. So this would only be the case, for example, if we had a responsive website. Then the entire website would be visible. Then like this, it would be visible inside our iframe, so perfectly. However, our website is not yet responsive, meaning it will stop right here and it will not be displayed any further. So that is the issue here in this case. Now let's go to the YouTube video. Now the YouTube video, of course, once again, it needs a ratio of 16:9, of course. Otherwise, we will have the black bars. And therefore, I have already given it a ratio of 16:9, and it does not have any black bars right now. So nothing at all. So here, however, that is the case here with YouTube videos. This is the dimensions or the things to consider in regards to the dimensions for a YouTube video. Now comes the next one, and that is Google Maps. So with Google Maps, it completely doesn't matter. We can make any width and height with Google Maps, because what happens here is things will always adjust here. Let me make that map, let me give it a width and a height of 100%, which I have already done so. Google Maps, iframe, and now it takes up the entire area. Nevertheless, it will not be distorted because it will always adjust. It will adjust by zooming in and zooming out. So this is different here. So here we can see it always depends how we use width and height completely depends on what content we are embedding onto our website. Now comes the last example, and goes even further. Now another example where width and height completely have a different meaning, basically in this case. These width and height have been given to me by this website. And that width and height I must use. Otherwise, that widget, that content that I have now that I'm including from that website is otherwise not being displayed if I'm not using the exact dimensions that this website gives me. We can of course make use of small, medium and large here. However, to go for our own dimension is not possible. As we can see now, only one cloud is being displayed, not the entire thing anymore. So that one didn't actually decrease now to be packed inside 40 pixels to what I have reduced the size to. Instead, it needs its original dimensions that we have, that has been given to us by the according website that we are including onto our website. So it always depends width and height. And one more comment in regards to a YouTube video. So that one we cannot cover the entire area. Doesn't work. We will always have ultimately black bars if the area that we are covering is not a 16:9 ratio. So we cannot make use of object fit or object position here. Doesn't work. However, we can make use of filter, and let us make use of that one actually straight away. For example, on the Google Maps, let me use blur, for example. Let me blur it 10 pixel and let me reload the page. And here we can see now it's being blurred. We can use grayscale and all these different options that we ultimately have. We can use for videos, for images, and also now for these iframes, for content that is embedded onto our website. So this one works. Filter works, object fit, object position do not work on the iframe. Now let's go for the next attribute, and hereby let us take a look at our content, at that content that I have embedded here, week number 4. So this one has a border, and all the iframes have a border by default. If we are not using the border attribute frame border and setting that border to 0. The options that we have here is either we set it to 0, to 1, which means we want a border. Another option we have is no. We can also say, hey, we don't want a border. That one works as well. Let me remove width and height here, so it's not underlined anymore. Once I reload the page, the border is gone. And we, of course, also here we have control over the border as well with CSS by setting the border property to none. So this one exists as well also. Next one is scrolling. Right now, that content has scroll bars in order for the entire content to be accessible. And that can be defined whether we want scroll bars or not. We can define by using the scrolling attribute. And here we have 3 different values. First of all, it's auto, meaning scroll bars are attached whenever there is overflowing content, otherwise not. Another value that we have is we want scroll bars always, whether there is overflowing content or not, or we don't want any scroll bars. That is no. And once I reload the page, the scroll bars are gone. Now here comes the point now. We know that we can have actually control over scroll bars by using the overflow property in CSS. Now this one has no effect here. We must use scrolling, that attribute. With overflow we have no control because those scroll bars belong to the website that we are embedding. So we have no control ultimately. So if that YouTube video had scroll bars, those scroll bars would belong to the YouTube website. So we cannot control it. It's inside the iframe, while the border was still outside the iframe, and therefore we can also use border in CSS instead of using frame border. But for using to control the scroll bars, we need to go for the scrolling attribute. No other choice. Now comes the next attribute, and that is name. And here we can give that iframe a name. Let me just call it XY. And now what I have pre-created here as well are 3 different links. So 3 links, and usually when we click a link, of course, we ultimately load that content inside our tab. It will be displayed here. Now what we can also do is now we can use the target attribute. And here we go now with the target attribute once again. Let's go for our 3rd value that it can have besides self and blank that we have already taken a look at. And here I will be using now that name of the iframe. So of course, as we may expect now, that content, that is week number 5 in this case, week number 4 or week number 3, once we click that link, it will be displayed inside that iframe. It will not load in a separate page. So let me click number 5. And here is number 5. Let me click number 3. This is week number 3. Let me go back to week number 4. Here is week number 4. Perfect. So this is another thing that we can do with iframes. So in regards to YouTube videos, for example, here it may make sense if we want to show several YouTube videos where the people can choose from. So we ultimately provide different links, each link leading to a different YouTube video that gets updated then in the iframe, for example. And now comes the last part on iframes, and that is a very important part, because it has to do with security. And herefore we first need to understand what the iframe actually is, which we haven't completely discussed yet. Because the iframe, of course, is content that we have embedded onto our website. However, that content is in a so-called different browsing context. Because when we are browsing our website with our mouse, we are on a website with a mouse, we are browsing that website. However, once we go over this area, we are not browsing our website anymore, we are browsing the YouTube website. So that brings with it a couple of concerns in regards to security, which we find out in a moment. Same thing here, if I go over that area, now I am on the website, basically I'm in the browsing context of this website, not on our website here anymore, but on that website. So we are in a different so-called different browsing context. And this brings with it some security issues, quite some in particular even, because if we don't specify any restrictions, then what those websites that we have embedded onto our website, what they can do is quite endlessly, I would say even. So they could, for example, change our content of the website, our CSS, the appearance of the content they would have control over. They would have control over which users, which people are visiting our website, and they can track those users. They have quite some control over our website ultimately. Therefore, we need to specify restrictions. So this is the point with iframes, while whenever we are including an iframe from Google Maps, from YouTube, from pretty much any website, there is no restriction yet set. So those restrictions we must set. And this is done by using the sandbox attribute. Sandbox. And when that attribute is not there, then no restrictions apply. Everything is allowed. And once we specify it, then nothing is allowed. So it's exactly the opposite. And then what we can also do, we can allow several things here, right in here, which I have already right here as a couple of examples. For example, what we can do, we can allow top navigation. And here we will let us go over them individually, a couple of them at least, in order to take a look what each of them, what we are allowing then, each individual website that we have on our website. So allow top navigation stands for when we are clicking a link inside an embedded website. Shall that website open inside the iframe, or shall it also be allowed to open inside our tab? Meaning pretty much it can walk outside and open right in here, removing our page and display its page instead. However, but what needs to be done is, first of all, the target of week number 3. So once I click week number 3 now, the target must be set to parents. So this is another value now that we have for the target attribute. So what will happen is now, once I click week number 3, then week number 3 will not open in here, it will instead open inside the tab, inside the entire area here. But that is the precondition that must be set here, the parent. It is not the iframe, but the parent is walking out to the parent, and it will be displayed in the parent area here, the parent browsing context. So let me reload the page and let me click number 3, and here we can see. So it's not opening inside the iframe anymore, instead inside the entire area of the parent browsing context. Now let's go for another one, and that is allow scripts. First of all, let me make that example actually with YouTube. So once we specify sandbox, now from no restrictions apply, it immediately turns into all, nothing is allowed, all restrictions apply. And now I will be loading the website again. And what will happen? Oh, here we go. We can see iframes take a while to load because of one feature that I haven't gone over yet. So here we can see YouTube video doesn't work anymore, because it needs a certain allowance in order for it to work. Same as for Google Maps, because Google Maps, for example, has been written in JavaScript completely. So in order for it to function and also to be displayed, we need JavaScript. And right now, when we have all restrictions forbidden, all restrictions applied, we are not allowing the embedding website, the website that we have embedded onto our website, we do not allow it to use any JavaScript. And however, YouTube videos need JavaScript and also Google Maps, for example, and some other applications as well. Now the weather application, for example, that one doesn't matter. We can give it sandbox completely, don't allow him anything, it will still work. However, YouTube videos and Google Maps don't. So what we need to allow here is allow scripts. And then once we have set this one, YouTube video will be visible once again. Why are things loading so slowly actually right now? And this is, let us inspect the element here, what is actually happening. So here's our iframe. Let's take a look now inside the iframe. Inside the iframe is now the website YouTube. So the doc type is there, a new HTML element, head element, body element. And these head elements, all that's in here is part of YouTube. So we are really embedding a website here onto our website. And that causes here right now things to go a little bit slower, because I have embedded now 3 different things right now at the same time for 4 different things. So this is allow scripts, which some applications that we are embedding, they rely upon that regulation to be there, that allowance to be there. Otherwise, they do not work. Then next one is allow pop-ups. Now, once we have said allow scripts, pop-ups can only be created when they open in a window and not in a tab, can only be created with JavaScript. And once we have JavaScript allowed, however, that means no pop-ups are allowed. So this is what this allowance value here specifies. All JavaScript is allowed, but no pop-ups. Now let me also make use of all scripts and all pop-ups at the same time. So JavaScript is allowed now and all pop-ups as well. And that is, of course, also a bad thing. Now NetBeans doesn't understand allow pop-ups. However, this one exists. It just isn't yet updated, I guess, my NetBeans version yet. So let me now, I have what I have created here. Week number 2, I have given an ID of X and Y. And here I have a little bit of JavaScript, and that exactly will now create a pop-up inside the parent here. So meaning, whenever we are including something, embedding another website, and we might click something, then it might happen that a pop-up pops up on our website. So we have control. We must either restrict it or we want to allow it, of course, depends. But which is rather a spam website than which we are then creating, or where there is a lot, such as a watch online cinema movies online, for example. This is exactly what happens on those websites. So allow pop-ups. Let me now click link number 2, and here's the pop-up popping up. So we have these restrictions. Some of them we really need to consider, we need to set whenever we are including embedding content from another website. Now another one is allow modals. That is whether the pop-ups are allowed to pop up inside here, inside the iframe, not in our, but inside here. Then comes allow same origin, and that is the last one I want to go over, and that is such an important one. Such an important one to not allow, to never set in this case. So for example, if we had allow scripts and allow same origin, which is always, let's remember, which is always the case whenever we are embedding an iframe. None of the restrictions apply, everything is allowed. So also scripts are allowed and same origin. And same origin is referring to, hey, this website that we are embedding can have access, can control whatever we can control as well. It's of the same origin. We trust that website basically. So it can control, it can manipulate our website. It has control of the users that visit our website, basically everything. And together with scripts, because most of that checking, manipulation, of course, must be done with JavaScript. And when those two are applied, which is always the case when we don't add sandbox, when we include embed and iframe, then those websites have control over our website. So something very important to consider, and very important, allow same origin. That's the worst, or the worst when we don't want it at least. So together with allow scripts, that one usually never the one to specify. So that is iframe. Now one more comment. We are almost done now. This is the embed element, which is also in charge of including external content. However, it is in charge of including static external content that has nothing to do with HTML basically. And that content is either in regards to animations or in regards to plugins, where the browser needs a plugin. In terms of animations, for example, when we have an SVG image, SVG images allow for animations, for example. So such an image we would include embed by using the embed element. And here, once again, it's width and height. So those ones I will not go over now. And the other one is source. And I already have here a PDF file right here. So under media, and then it's other, and then it's sample.pdf. And here also the last one attribute is type, and that's it then. Type, because here the browser needs to know whether it can first of all support that format, and then also if it supports it, what it shall do, so it immediately knows how it shall act. In this case, PDF. The browser requires a plugin in order to read PDF. It needs a PDF reader, that is the plugin. So all of the browsers have a PDF reader, but it's not part of the browser, it's an extension, it's a plugin. So this is where we would use the embed element for plugins and for animations. Basically always for something that has nothing to do with HTML content. And here for PDF, the main category is application. It's an application that we are including. Application, and then it's PDF. And that is it. And also, always we would use it, therefore, for where the browser needs a plugin, or where there is animation involved, meaning any animation. So it's rather static in comparison to the iframe. Here everything is dynamic, of course. So everything is live in regards to the iframe. For example, if someday, of course tomorrow, the weather application would not be Thursday, Friday, Saturday anymore. Instead it would be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's live, it's changing live. Also Google Maps, if they decide to change the color of the water, it will change on our website as well. And if someone decides on that video to include an advertising video before the actual video, we would also see that advertising video first on our website. As these things are live, we are embedding content live in comparison to embedding now static content that either requires a browser plugin or it's based on animation. Last comment is in regards to the object, which I don't want to go over because everything that it can be done by the iframe and by the embed element. And all I know is rather, as far as I know, is rather something. It had good use cases in order to remedy browsers that do not support, for example, video and audio. However, this is not the case anymore because all the browsers that we support are fine with video and audio. Therefore, I have taken the object element out of the spec, out of our vocabulary, same as the param element. which is a child of the object. Same thing here. Just if we encounter those, we know what they are. It's also in charge of embedding external content. Same as iframe. It's an alternative to the iframe, but the iframe is the better one. So this is it. Now next week, now we are done with multimedia, and next week we are going over positioning once again. We are back to positioning, and we will be going over out of the flow positioning. Meaning placing things on top of a video, for example, or a content image. So a background image, we can always place things on top. They are automatically on top. But in regards to content, such as a video, for example, here we need extra code that we haven't yet seen, extra vocabulary, and this is what we will be doing next week.